Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today's session. We'll be starting a session now. Please allow me a minute so I can quickly share my screen and we'll get it started. Please bear with me. All right. So as you can see, we're on time. Let's get started. Perfect. Yes, thank you so much, everyone, for joining today's session. Again, a very good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you're watching this from. Welcome to another session of GSDC Certified Learning Masterclass Series, Managing Intelligent Projects with Autonomous AI. So, my name is 𝗟𝗟𝗓𝗄. I'll be your session moderator today. Feel free to reach out to me over the chat box in case if you have any question or concern for me, and I'm really happy to assist you all. All right. So, just those who have joined us for the first time, so just wanted to inform you that previously we have covered and explored some topics on autonomous AI, intelligent project management, agile governance, and the human oversight. And today we are focusing on a critical foundation for AI driven organization, data as a foundation of AI driven enterprise. We'll explore how data quality, governance, security, and the accessibility enables organizations to build reliable AI, create sustainable business value. So let's get started. As you can see on my slide, we had this incredible panel of experts lined up for this entire week, which was scheduled from 24 to 28 August 2026. So make sure that you'll be joining all the rest of the sessions which is scheduled this week using the same registration link, right? And with the same time slot, which is 10:30 p.m. Singapore, which is a standard time slot for this particular series. So you can check your time zones accordingly and do join us for all the sessions as well. So AI is the only powerful as the data behind it, right? So organization today have access to enormous amount of data, but the real challenge is making that data trusted, accessible, secure, and useful for AI. So today, as I mentioned, we'll explore how strong data foundation can support better AI analytics and business decision making. So before we begin, I would love to know where you all are joining us from. Please drop your location, country, city in the chat box. It's always great to see a global presence of our GSTC has a global audience who is joining us across the world. Let me have a quick look in the chat box. Okay, Benzeli, we have Benzeli from India, Curry from USA. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Adi is joining us from Indonesia. Hera is joining us from Malawi. All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Philippines. Maria joining from Philippines. Thank you, Maria. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much. It's great to see you all join for. I've been seeing some of the names for consistently for all the sessions previously that conducted in the GSDC. So as you can see on my slide, this masterclass series brings together all the industry experts to explore the autonomous AI, intelligent project management. So we have covered AI driven planning so far, agile transformation, governance, and the intelligent project management, right? So let me just quickly move to the next slide about our hosting organization. I would like to take a few more minutes to introduce our hosting organization, specifically those who have joined us for the first time. So we are Global Skill Development Council, we are vendor agnostic, vendor neutral, globally recognized independent certification body. Also, as you can see on my slide, we have certified more than 250,000 professionals worldwide so far. Also, we have 100 plus certification domain. That means we have certification offerings in different domains that includes majorly almost all domains that I'll be informing you all in my upcoming slide. Also, we have reached out till 80 plus countries so far. Also, we work with 100 plus global authorized training partner across the regions. We have partners in Asia, Africa, Canada, America, and many other countries. Plus, we work with 200 plus global subject matter experts. They work with us closely to help us with our programs, exam, and all the deliverables. Also, we are in association with 1,000 plus multinational corporates, 500 Fortune companies, and 50 plus universities across the world. So feel free to visit our website www.gsdcouncil.org to check all information or all the listed certification that GSDC offers, and of course other offerings and benefits that we have for all the professionals out there. So as I mentioned in my previous slide, we do have 100 plus certification portfolio with us, all right? So we cover certification majorly in generative AI, where we have 12 plus certification in different domains that covers different industries. Agentic AI, 10 plus certification, L&D and HR, 12 plus certification. ISO that includes lead auditor, lead implementer, project management, PMO, agile, ITSM, emerging technologies, digital transformation, and many more, as you can see on my slide, right? So all these certification is specifically designed for all the professionals out there who are actually looking forward to get certified with GSDC and who really want to, looking forward to get upskill and who wants to stay industry relevant in this rapidly evolving AI era, I must say, right? So in case if you're really looking forward to, get more information about all these certification, feel free to visit our website, or you can reach out to our learning advisors anytime. They're always there to help you with this all information which is associated with all these certification programs that we have. Now moving forward to the next slide, I am very proud to inform you all that we are globally trusted. As you can see on my slide, we have received 50,000 plus independently verified reviews over the reviews.io and 96% learner recommendation score. So I would like to encourage all of you to please drop your reviews on Trustpilot as well as on reviews.io. And we're happy to see that. After the session, you can always share your reviews on the reviews.io. And as I mentioned that, we always love to see that. All right. So I'm very happy to inform you all that we'll be broadcasting this session live streaming worldwide via our partner Restream, where we'll be live more than 30 plus social media platforms, our social handles, which is YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and many more. All right. So we are reaching out more than 80,000 plus people who are associated with GSDC network. So to our speaker, we are not addressing a small room today, but we are reaching out to more than 80,000 plus people who are associated with GSDC network. Some of them will watch us live, and we have a very selected audience who will be joining us over the Zoom as well. So before I hand over the mic to a speaker, we would love to know which all backgrounds, industry that you are joining us from. So I would love to know your designation. Please drop your designations in the chat box. And let me quickly have a look. As for the data, we have delivery and program leaders, engineers, data leaders, AI/ML engineers, project managers, PMOs. Wenzili, she's a consultant. All right, thank you. Please drop your designation so our speaker will get a clear picture of the audience that we have in the room today. Come on, guys, I can see 26 people. All right, we have Forden. He's a information system analyst. All right, thank you. That's great to know. Kerry is BAPM, business analyst, project manager. That's great, Kerry. Thank you. We have Hara, he's a software developer. Great, Hara. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you, everyone. It's always great to see how diverse of the audience that we have across the globe from different industries. Rajiv is a program manager, Ajay is consultant. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. All right, without any further ado, I would like to quickly move to our speaker announcement. So it's my pleasure to introduce our today's speaker, 𝗟𝗪𝗪𝗃. He's a senior director, data and AI at PGIM. Dev is an innovative technology leader and enterprise architect with 15 plus years of experience driving data, ML, and AI initiatives across the financial and insurance sectors. He currently leads enterprise data and the AI governance and engineering teams, focusing on secure, scalable cloud platforms and responsible AI solutions. Today, he'll share his insights on data as the foundation of AI-driven enterprise. We'll explore how data quality, governance, security, and the accessibility can enable reliable AI and sustainable business value. Please join me giving a warm welcome to 𝗟𝗪𝗪𝗃. Thank you so much, 𝗟𝗪𝗪𝗃, for joining us. Really excited for your session today. You can take the handover of the mic now. Thank you so much again for joining.
Thank you, Preetham. Am I audible, Preetham, right now?
Yes, you are audible. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Hello, everyone. This is 𝗟𝗪𝗪𝗃. I'll share my screen and we can quickly start. Okay. I believe we can see the screen. Okay.
Yes.
Great. So today's the topic is the data is the foundation of AI-driven enterprise. For any enterprise who is driving AI, AI is right now used everywhere, but the core thing remain is the data, because data is a core foundation for any enterprise to go into the AI use cases and projects. That is what the topic is all about today and how critical it is. What I want to say first is that AI actually didn't create a new problem. The problem got exposed. Like if you see from 10 to 15 years back, we had data across everywhere. We had data governance. But if you see 10 to 15 years back, we never cared about what data dictionary looks like. What is a glossary term? What is a semantic model or ontology? But data existed. It doesn't mean that the data reports, Power BI reports, and all the reports, dashboards did not exist. Everything existed, but it was not given so much importance on the organization of the data, on how do we organize it. Now, what happened with AI is that it started exposing, because now with AI, if you take the era of LLM or Gen AI, which is after 2021, and before as well, it started exposing some of the nuances, what data is not governed. And that's what we will be covering. So I just wanted to share the feedback that AI didn't create any new data problem, but it exposed the old one, which we had. So now with before and after of Gen AI, I just wanted to say with before, we used to always call garbage in, garbage out. That means if we have a data which is not that tidy, or it's not governed well, or it's not cataloged, does not have any kind of data dictionary like column description, table description, these are very minimal things that was required. If it did not have, behind, like maybe before Gen AI, we had traditional ML models and everything, we used to say garbage in equal to garbage out. Now, the problem is with the era of Gen AI, because now we have all the GPTs and chatbots coming up, now we are asking some pinpoint questions. Now, the thing is, garbage in is equal to actually garbage out to the power of n. Because if you see from 10 to 15 years back, or maybe if even 5 to 7 years back, we used to have reports, but the reports were targeted to few users who wanted to use it. Or even the models which were created, it was for few people or few section of group or project. But now with the introduction of Gen AI, we started creating n number of bots, agents, the co-pilots, so many other things. With that, what happened is whenever data which is not that governed or not tidy, or it's a garbage data, the end result is really bad because it amplifies the result. I just created a small animation. That is how it is. Like it's very fast to see, but what it says is that if there is a bad field, bad data, or any schema issues or any discrepancies, now it gets amplified. Earlier, it was not amplified. And that's what the blast radius has become because of the bad data after the Gen AI era. Now, to begin with this entire session, I've divided into 5 parts on why the data readiness is required for our AI success, how the quality of the data and the accessibility, cataloging, the governance is crucial and critical at this time. A very high level architecture on how the modern architecture for AI looks like. How do we enterprise, or how do we manage the enterprise knowledge, and also create the data readiness roadmap. These are the 5 sections that we'll be going through in this session. The first is why data readiness determines the AI success. Now, when we say about data readiness, so it's a very high level and we can define it in many ways, but I define it in just 4 ways as of now. Why data readiness is required. First is the availability of the data. In an organization, if you see, we capture data, but we never catalog it. So there might be departments where the data is captured and is siloed, but it may happen in that is the several same data can be captured by different departments and people may not be aware of it. There is a duplicacy and no one knows what's the golden source of data and where the data is available. Now that becomes a challenge because there is a data, for example, any financial data, and that is being captured by 3 different departments. And all the 3 departments are not connected to each other. because they don't have any place to catalog their data. The availability is not being shown. That becomes an issue for the entire organization, because where is the golden source of data? Where is the truth? So that becomes a problem. So the availability, trustworthy, well described, and access and governed, that's very crucial for any AI. The reason is, whenever we create any chatbots, because nowadays we are creating a lot of bots and agents, and also even the traditional ML models, we depend on data. On data, we create all these models. If the source of the data is not governed, or it's not the golden source of data, then the result of the bot will also differ. So that becomes a problem. Why the data and what data readiness means in these four things. And it can be defined in a different way as well. Now, this slide, as I described, I know we have the program manager and some of the BA people have joined, and they are more aware of BI, the business intelligence part. The business intelligence, we can talk about reports, dashboards, what we use to create. Now, with the Power BI dashboards or any dashboards that we create using any of the tools, what happens is we have the human reads the data and the output. If it is aggregated, all the errors and the mistakes can be hidden. I'm not saying it will be hidden, but it can be hidden. All the noise and everything gets hidden. And the problem is that it requires even a refresh as a periodic rate. What this means is, there might be a nightly batch which would be running on every night to upgrade the data, or maybe an hourly batch. Now, that was the easy part for the BI, because it may not require real-time data every time. But with the invent of the LLMs and everything, it requires a lot of machine speed. The reason is that we have huge amount of data, and every data is not structured. It can be an unstructured data, and most of the data is unstructured as of now, if you see from the Gen AI era. And the problem is, we ask now pinpoint questions, which was not available into BI. It was there, but right now, as if you use any kind of GPT or any chatbot, you would be asking a very pinpoint question. And for that, the answer, for example, tell me the revenue of some company which is based in New Jersey. Now, that revenue number would be exactly to the point. Now, that becomes, it's not an issue. It is really good. But if the data is not correct, it just amplifies, because now you are able to see correct way. In BI, you will see a lot of charts, a lot of graphs. It was really awesome. But here in the era of LLM or Gen AI, you are able to see the information in a very magnetic way, or what you can say is that in a magnifying way, because right now you are getting a pinpoint answer, and it is very easy to catch the error. So now, with the invent of LLMs and Gen AI era, the data has become very crucial. And that's the reason I just said BI was forgiving, but AI is not. Now, and if you have worked on any of the models or the Gen AI or the LLM part, the model is the easy part. The reason is why, because we have many companies who are creating these LLM endpoints and everything. There are many companies in the ground who are working on this. So just calling an API endpoint and getting the answer, it has become very easy, and you can then orchestrate all the LLM endpoints and get the answer. The hard part is that if the data is not correct, even the frontier models, which is being given by so many other companies and the vendors, they won't be also able to save you from the error. Because if the data is not correct, the output of the frontier models also will fail. And that's the reason we wanted to say that the model is the easy part. It's not the tough part as of now, because it's been created by some vendors as of now, and we can also develop it by ourselves. But right now, if you see, most of the LLM are being developed by some of the vendors with all the endpoints given. The only issue is that if the data is not correct, the output of any of these frontier models will be erroneous. So that's the reason we need to have proper cataloging of the data governance, which includes the data dictionary, glossaries, labeling of the data, and also how do we make it available, and the golden source of data, which is very important. It should not be like we have data and that data is sitting across all the organization in a different format and different way. In that way, any of the frontier models will not be able to predict what the output would be. So that's the reason the model is the easy part, but it's not the tough part as of now, because the data is the one which will create the foundation of your product. Going to the second one, since we just understood what data readiness means, now we would be going into what data quality, accessibility, and governance, because this was what I was talking about as the foundation of the models, or the foundation of the data for creating any AI enterprise. Data quality, accessibility, and governance are one of the critical pieces for any of the organizations to produce any products which is based on AI. Now, there are three questions we need to answer before we set up any kind of enterprise AI. We need to answer the quality of the data, the accessibility, and governance. These are the few things which are really required, but these are the most critical ones. Like quality, if the data quality is good or not. Is it a quality-based data? That's what I was talking about. If you don't have a catalog, or if you don't have domain or subdomains being defined within an organization, or if it is not cataloged, then team like department 1, 2, 3 will have their same data, but in a different format and in different way. In that way, no one would be able to trust the data. That's the reason the quality of the data should be given one of the first priority. How the quality of the data is being taken care. For that, we have to catalog the data, and then we need to have data stewards and the governance team to take care of some of the quality piece of it. The accessibility, definitely, how do we access the data? Because the data would be sitting across everywhere. It can be in some RDBMS, in maybe in some NoSQL DB. It can be in some NAS share or some of the SharePoint, some of the places. Now, how do we access the data? That is very much important. And the accessibility should be deal with security. That's one of the other criteria, that the access should not be given to everyone. The reason is, it's very important, the accessibility, because many people, they confuse with the accessibility and the security part. With the earlier models or Power BI dashboard, the thing was getting leaked data leakage was not that fast, if you see, because the problem was you had a very guardrailed way of accessing the data. But with the chatbots, behind the scene, whatever data that we use, even it's a structured data or a unstructured data, the accessibility and the security plays together a very big role, because in order to stop the leakage of any sensitive data, that's why accessibility, it should not be that open that everyone can access everything. It should not be like anyone can ask, okay, what's the salary of XYZ, and the bot is trying to get the answer from some HR table and getting the data and giving you the answer. That is something which a security breach is happening. Or there might be a security breach on some other things where the sensitive data should not be exposed. So the accessibility plays a big role, but with security, it should not be that security is compromised. So that's why we have a lot of other topics called RBAC, like role-based access control, tag-based access control. Those are the things that are being classified on top of the data. That's why the data quality, classification, the accessibility part plays a big role. Now, governance comes at the third. Why? Because the quality and accessibility are playing the first two roles. Governance is required for all our classification of the data, whether the data is classified as a sensitive or public data, confidential, restricted, and then who is the owner of this data, because the owner is also should be documented well. And how do we, so that it can increase the trust of the data that's being shared across all the technologies and also the products that we are creating within the organization. These three play a big role: quality, accessibility with security, and governance, where we do the data management, catalog, ownership define. Even in some of the organization, we also define domain and subdomains. It's a very big enterprise. We have several domains, for example, finance, HR, marketing, product, so many other domains. And then we have subdomains inside that. How do we define them? And then we classify the data, and then we monitor. So all these things are required before we do any kind of AI for an enterprise, so that we we do all these projects of AI and the use cases in a very governed and a productive way. And it's very secured also, so that we don't leak any kind of sensitive data outside. For that reason, these three questions must be answered when we answer how do we set up the enterprise AI in an organization. Now, data quality. First thing that we talked about. The classic six, the reason why I showed this classic six, because this was there for a very long time. For any data engineering projects or BI engineering projects, we would be looking into accuracy, completeness, consistency, timeliness, validity, uniqueness. These were the classic ones that we used to look into. These are not the new ones. It existed even from the 10 to 15 years back as well. Now with the AI, things have changed. It's not like we are ignoring this. These are required. Along with this, we require these as well. The label quality. How do we tag the data? If the data is being classified, classification depends on your confidential, restrictive, public, private. All these are labels. Labels are very important, because if it's a confidential data, that data or data set, table, file, anything should not be accessed through any kind of chatbots, because that's how this label quality plays a big role. And any of the governance tool you take from any of the vendors, they will have this label quality classification. So now this has become very crucial, which was not there present when we were doing any kind of other projects in data engineering. But this has become crucial as of now because of the leakage of any of the data through any agents, bots, anything. Freshness. This existed here as well, but freshness has become very important and crucial, because if you see any kind of GPTs, whether you work on any of the chatbots, if you ask any question, it should not be giving any stale answer. For example, tell me the stock price of Microsoft or something. The problem is it cannot give and retrieve the answer from a stale answer. It has to be very real, because sometimes some of the business decisions will be taken based on the answer which is provided. So it's very crucial that the freshness of the retrieval becomes crucial. How fresh the data is, because that's how we were talking about how real-time data is required and how stale answers can actually make disaster decisions for the company. So this freshness has become more crucial. It was there, it was fine, but now this freshness has become very crucial. It cannot stay like, you cannot give a stock price or anything of a company which is day -1. It has to be current, because some decisions might be taken based on that, and some calculations might be taken. I'm just giving an example of stock price. It can be anything. Now, these two play a big role, semantic and ontology. Semantic model and ontology model. Now, these I'll explain in the next slides also, but these play a big role in chatbots. Chatbots are nothing like you have the data or the tables, and you start querying the table using any, maybe it's a semantic model, it can be a DEX query, or it can be a SQL query. It's not as simple as that, because if you do that, then you will end up having a lot of hallucinations with your chatbot. Now, semantic and the ontology alignment is definitely required for your data. What that means is, when you have the data, when you have tables, semantic model plays a role for relationships, or the relationships which are between the tables, and also the business meanings. For example, the data dictionary, table description, which is very much required. The reason why I'm saying, because a table has, for example, a column called f_name. Now, f_name, we know it's a first name, but how does a chatbot know about it? It will never. I have seen many tables, and you might be also come across about tables with columns ux_bd_cd, something like that. Now, the problem is, the person who created that table might have given some acronyms. Now, as a business person or a data engineer, we can know about those meanings of those acronyms. But how does the chatbot know about it? Now, we have to give them entire list of mapping files and everything. That becomes a challenge. Otherwise, the bot will never be able to understand that f_name is equal to a first name. It becomes very difficult for them as well. And we have, suppose, 800 columns like that. So that's the reason the semantic model is very important when we define all the business meanings, the relationships, the table description, the data description. Now, ontology also plays a big role. Ontology says how these business meanings are related to each other, because we say as, for example, for a rental property, I'm just giving an example, the end date is the rental property's lease end date. But how do we know that it's a lease end date or it's a rental property's end date? Or how is it related to if it is the rent end date? So, and it just simply says that it's end underscore date. Now, to relate this end underscore date with some other tables and columns, this ontology alignment is required. So these two are really very, if you see and search it in internet, the ontology and semantic plays a big role to make your bot intelligent. And this is falling under the data structure itself, on how do we structure or organize your data as a foundation. So I'll discuss more on this in the next slide. Provenance, it's more about the data lineage, the origin of the data. And that's very important because how this data is getting generated. The reason is very simple, because if you have a chatbot and you ask any question, and the problem is that it gave an answer, you need to know from which source it gave the answer from, because that's how you would be testing a bot. If it gave an answer and it did not give you the source, it becomes a problem. That's the reason the lineage existed long time back. How the lineage is, if the data is being generated from a SQL, then from where it is coming from which source it is coming from where the calculations happened, all those things were there. But now why it has become more important and demanding? Because if you ask a question and if you see any of the bots or any of the GPTs available in the market, whenever you ask a question, it will give you a source, like from which source it has picked the data, because it's very important to trace your answer. That will give a confidence to the end user that the answer that it was provided, it's actually the right answer, or it's a golden source of truth. That's the reason this provenance is required. And lineage has become more important right now. Drift was also existing before. We call it as data drift or something. And we used to traditionally call as schema evolution. If you have done with the data engineering, we used to see call as schema evolution, like an additional column got added or a column got dropped from a table. Now with data drift, the thing is that it has become more crucial, because any agents or chatbots, we are dealing in a very real time. And if there is any change in the column or any kind of schema, then or even in the documents getting stale or even that, it has to deal with it very promptly. So the data drift has become very crucial now, because now we are dealing with real-time information. So these are the things that I wanted to say about data quality. Like we have classic 6. This did not go away anywhere. These are still there. They are the cores. But these have become additional demanding, and some of the things which got newly added, like semantic and ontology, which is really required in the era of AI for any kind of data foundations in the organization. Now, when we say trapped data, now this actually fits from where it's coming from. And I'll not spend much time on this slide because it says almost the same what I discussed in the last one. But what I want to say here is that right now we have the data which is sitting on silo basis. For example, you may have in enterprise many departments. Many departments have their own set of data or financial data, which may have the same thing, but they might be using it in a different way. So they are sitting in siloed and no one is aware of it. And that makes it very difficult for the discovery part. And that's why I say it as undiscoverable wrong shape. It may not be called as wrong shape, but it may be called as a shape where the business units or the departments want, but it's not in the right shape for other departments to consume. That's why we don't have the data right now in a right format. What makes it reachable? This is what I discussed already about data cataloging, semantic ontology, self-service, and fit for use delivery, which I discussed in the previous slides as well. But the more concern is about semantic layer and the ontology layer. This I would be discussing more, because the others are already aware of what data catalog means, because that's what I was talking about on how do we capture the metadata, governance, glossary, data dictionary of every tables. Self-service access, this is something like every organization has their own way of accessing the data. And that's why I will not tell much about it, because it tells more about how your organization wants to deal with your access mechanism. But a self-service would definitely help. And fit for use for delivery, any data which can be used in a right format for any kind of business use case for any departments, that is which will make it reachable. But let me discuss more about the semantic layer and ontology, which is really critical for any data organization to make it AI ready. Now, I'm just giving an example here. I just wanted to give an example on the revenue part. So for revenue, as I was talking last time as well, for revenue, there is a meaning for finance, and we have separate meaning for sales, and it can be for any other lake which is existing, maybe in rental properties or real estate. So the problem is with revenue, if I create a bot which is or a chat bot on top of a data which has revenue, it has different meanings to it. Now, how do we reconcile that? Now, the other problem is that the domain part, that's what I was talking about, defining a domain and subdomains, whether it's for finance, market, real estate, credit, and all those things. So the domain plays another big role. The other one is how do we context the data? Now, the semantic layer and ontology plays a big role here, which was not existing maybe before the era of Gen AI. Now, semantic layer and ontology plays a big role for making your bots more intelligent. You can consider this semantic layer to be a place where it is defining all the aggregation rules, relationships, and everything. Ontology is something which defines the business meanings to it. What this ontology or the whole data set or the connections mean to everyone. Now, the combination of both of semantic and ontology will make the bot more intelligent. And this is required from the data foundation itself. It's not required from the AI LLM side of it, but it has to be done through the data foundation layer itself, which never existed before. That's why I wanted to give more emphasis and importance on semantic layer and the ontology layer, which needs to be existing right now for creating any kind of bots which are very intelligent. So and that's what I wrote at the end also, like it guarantees the numbers, that is the aggregation, and also the calculation which is happening behind the scene. Ontology gives the meaning to it, the business meaning, because that's very much required. And that's why I wanted to say about revenue, or even the end date, because end date for real estate can mean as a rental end date or the lease end date, or it can be end date to any employee. And the end date for maybe for marketing, it can be different meaning. It can have the end date maybe something like marketing campaign end date or something other. So that's why having a meaning to all these layers are very important, and that needs to be done through the data foundation itself. So the takeaway for this is give more importance to the semantic layer and the ontology layer if you want to create a chatbot and reduce the hallucination. I said reduce because you cannot remove hallucination. That is like is being given by many scientists as well, that the hallucination cannot be reduced to zero. It can be reduced, but not to zero. So that is what it is. I just mentioned reduces hallucination. But semantic and ontology layer on a very high level, this is a very high level diagram which I created, that it provides a numerical truth, that is the aggregation, the SQL query aggregation measures. If you have done with any kind of semantic model, the measures, aggregations, all the SQL queries, those are like the semantic model which can handle all the formulas. And ontology layer, you can think about all the relationships, the business meaning to it, domain knowledge to it, all the things can be provided in here. So I just want to switch back again to the governance part, why the data governance is required and what actually means on a very high level, and we can go deep into it. One is the ownership and stewardship. Now, this is something which I talked about on how do we define a domain, how do we define a domain owner, the subdomain, and subdomain owner can be there, but mostly it is always being done by the domain owners and the stewards. Stewards are the ones who would be deciding on what the glossary terms would be, which data we need to scan, classify, and also monitor. And also we need to see which are the critical data sets. So these are the ones which are required for our ownership and stewardship. The other one is the catalog and lineage. How do we catalog the data? That we already told about. How do we where do catalog? And there are many vendors which are available, but any enterprise can choose whatever they like. But catalog and lineage, this is very important on how do we catalog, because that's how the discovery and the accessibility will be there. Lineage is very important now because we need to know the source of the data. We need to know also the calculations which are happening. In most of the organization, if you see from the finance part, we need to know even the column level lineage, the calculation lineage. These two are very important for any kind of finance department. For example, if I ask, I want to create a ETF or a bond or something for finance, I have this data. Can you please formalize way on how do we create this ETF or any kind of stock, what you want to do, right? Now, the calculation which would be coming, we need to see the calculation. For those calculation, it's all coming from some columns. We need to see the column lineage. So sometimes some of the organization go even to the depth of column lineage also, not only on the data set lineage, but on the column lineage, because they want to do some kind of back test propagations and all those things. So we need to know the lineage. And with the era of AI, it has become more crucial to just know from where this calculation or the number came from. It's very important. Quality, this I have already talked about, but quality is very important because of golden source of data, how the quality is being maintained, the data profiling is very crucial to maintain standard quality of the data, and that can be utilized across all the departments and organization. Classification, privacy, as I was talking about the accessibility part, classification is the first part. How do we classify the data? If the classification is having confidential, public, private, or restricted, and it can be defined in a very different way also. I'm just defining 4 ways. If suppose if the organization has defined some of the data to be classified as restricted, or if it is confidential, then it's in a belief and it's a thing that we should not expose this data through any kind of AI until unless it is required by some groups. And that's the reason this is very important now, because we don't want to leak any kind of sensitive data, PII, PHI, or anything through our bots. And that's the reason it comes into the access control. Who has access to it? Because when we define the ownership and steward, we define even the access control to all this data. You might have seen in any of the RDBMS or any of the cloud system, we have all these roles being defined. Who has access to that group? Who has access to the data? So that there is a least privilege access protocol that we follow. And we know who has access to those data. So it's an important part on access control. Monitoring, definitely. It's not about monitoring about only drift and breakage. We also need to do the AI monitoring part. Few of them is which data sources this bot or model is trying to access the data from. That is something AI governance play a big role, because that becomes a crucial part on any of the data, what's being monitored for usage in any of the chatbots. So it's not only about detecting the drift and the breakage, but it's also about how do we monitor the usage of the data in any of the models, because that's very important. And that's how the monitoring also, you can say it as the AI governance part as well, along with data governance. So this is what we had from the governance as a control plane. So these are the 3 pillars. The next one that I wanted to say is about the data contracts. This may not be applied to all the organizations, but it is highly recommended that we have data contracts. Data contracts, in a very usual way, it just says that the source team has produced a data and it will be consumed by several consumers. Now, the source team needs to have a contract And the contract can be a JSON schema or something, which will just show what that table is, from where it is coming from, what's the frequency of the data, like the refresh, or what's the SLA, what's the type of data, the data format. All these things are required, because in that way, what happens, and what are the columns which are there in the data, all these things are required for the consumers, just for the purpose of knowing what the data is coming from, and from where the data is coming from, how the data is going to be utilized, and how do we deal with it. So it's a data contracts. I'm not saying that it has to be there, but if it is there, it's one of the best practices that we need to have data contracts when we share any data to everyone. In a enterprise, if I say, it's a must. The reason is that in an enterprise, the data would be shared with n number of people. For that reason, that having data contracts is very critical. So for any enterprise level company that you want to create an enterprise AI readiness of your data, the data contracts are very critical. It can be in the form of a JSON schema. It can be in a vendor, any vendor based tools as well, which are available. But these are one of the things where you can manage and catalog the contracts of any source of any data, which can be consumed by the entire enterprise. And this is required not only for the AI part, but also how do we make it accessible. That is what I was talking about earlier, about how do we make the data accessible, and from where the people would be able to consume the data from. So data contracts, definitely a best practice. And for any big organization, it needs to be there for the end consumers. Going to the third one. So right now we finished on the AI readiness part, on the 5 or the 3 pillars as of now. Now the modern data architecture. Now here we'll be discussing about the architecture, and it may differ with many organizations. I'm just giving the context of what I have come across so far, not only from my organization, but also from the organizations across when I talk to people around. So you might be familiar with these 3 things: data warehouse, data lake, lakehouse. Warehouse, we already know it's like RDBMS, where it is good for BI. It's a structured data. You can query with all the SQL queries, NC SQL, and what we have. Very nice, very fast, very good for BI. The only problem is that it's not very good for unstructured data. That's what we know about data warehouse. Now, data lake, you might have heard about, if you guys have worked on Hadoop, or you have heard about Hadoop. It was very famous from 2012 to 2018 maybe, and right now it's a very few companies still use it maybe, but many of them have moved to cloud. So data lake was based on that. We call it at swampy because you can dump any data, whether it's structured, unstructured, everything. But the problem was the retrieval part from the data lake, because it was not as quick as what we had in warehouse. So you can create tables, you can have the unstructured data also in Hadoop or any of the platform. The only problem was, how do we get the data out in a faster way? So Lakehouse, I'm pretty sure everyone knows about it because it has become very famous for a long time. Lakehouse is actually the one where it combines the advantage of both warehouse and the data lake. So it can store both the structured data as well as the unstructured data. And it is good for BI as well as the AI platform. So that's the reason most of the companies, if you see, they are going to the lakehouse side. And then we have a lot of other new concepts coming from different vendors, which I won't be talking about here, but it's more about the high level, how it has been evolved from warehouse, lakehouse, data lake, and then the combination of both their advantages called as lakehouse. You might be familiar if you have worked on the medallion architecture, which is going to the lakehouse. It's 3 layers. One, we have bronze layer, silver, and the gold. Basically, the bronze is the raw layer where we ingest the data. There is no quality which is promised. There is no data quality which is happening right now. Silver layer is the part where we standardize the data. We remove the deduplication part. We validate the data, and that's the silver. And then we have the gold layer. Now, the gold layer is the part where we share the data from. We don't share the data from bronze and silver. I don't think if there is any use case to share for it, but mostly we share it for gold. Silver, we still share the data maybe with the quality team if they want to do any kind of quality testing. But gold layer is the part where we share the data for any BI consumption as well as for any kind of AI consumptions as well. So these are the three layers which any medallion architecture will have. These are the two topics. I'll not get more into it because these are more organization specific on what data mesh and data fabric look like. And it all depends on any organization. It's not like if you don't have a data mesh or if you don't have a data fabric kind of thing, your strategy would fail. It's not like that. It's all dependent on how your organization is built. For example, I'll not go through the entire slide here, but what I want to say is that when you say about why I said that, because data mesh, when I say about decentralized, now, decentralized domains may not be agreeable by all the business units of any organization. It's not that easy to let them know that we need to have a decentralized or you need to have a unified access. Now, this needs a big discussion, not only with the leaders, but also with the enterprise architects on how they would like to see their data foundation grow in their company, whether to get into the data mesh part or data fabric, or just to do what they are doing right now with siloed organization. But this is something which is there about data mesh and data fabric on how we are solving for the modern data architecture. And most of the organization or the big organization, they follow some of the things here and the federated access as well. But I'll not go more deep into it. We have other topics to cover. Now, there are a few of the layers of any of the modern architecture, whether you take the data fabric, data mesh, or any of the regular architecture that we have. Now, these are the things which was never discussed before. The feature store, streaming, vector database, and also the orchestration and pipelines. Feature store is something where we want to store any features. For example, in ML engineering programs, you might be hearing about how do we store the feature, any features that are required to train. Those are some of the feature engineering work. We never deal with it so front when we were doing the data engineering work, but any kind of now data foundation work, now the feature store has become really critical. Vector database, as we all know, for vector database has become really rising database kind of after the era of Gen AI. The reason is we have a lot of unstructured data, PDFs, docs, so many others. Now, if you use any kind of vendor tools, you cannot just you can put one PDF and you can start asking questions. But think of if you have at least 100,000 PDF or 200,000 PDFs to answer from, it becomes really tough. You cannot have 200,000 PDF, put it into a LLM endpoint and start asking questions from it. It would be a disaster, because if you see from any of the GPTs that you might have worked, which is available outside from different vendors, asking questions, uploading a PDF and then asking questions from one PDF itself, it takes time. Think about 100,000 PDFs for any organization, or maybe 50,000 PDFs, or even 100,000. It becomes really difficult. So in that place, we use vector database. Now, this is one of the data foundation. It's not about the AI foundation. It's more about the data foundation. How do we convert the text into embeddings? It's a different topic altogether, but vector database play a very big role on converting the text to embeddings, and the chatbot will hit the vector database to get the embeddings, not the real text. In that way, what happens, it becomes much faster, and that's how you see the milliseconds response. Streaming real time, this already we talked about how it is very crucial, because a lot of things from stock price, from market rate, lot many other things, it all depends upon the streaming data. It's all real time. We cannot have stale data, and there may be other use cases also. Orchestration and pipelines, definitely it is required for not even for AI engineering, but for data engineering part, on how do we orchestrate the entire pipeline, whether it's a real time or batch. How do we orchestrate even the AI LLM calls as well? So these are very crucial part. These are the layers that we need to concentrate on when we are defining any kind of foundation layer of data. Vector database, I'll not go more into it because I have many other slides to cover. But vector database that's what I talked about previously about to make your chatbot faster and to have all this unstructured data to be read properly, and also to make it fast and give it in milliseconds, use the vector database, where we convert the text to embeddings. Embeddings are nothing but numbers. So we convert the text, which is in characters, into some numbers, and then we allow the chatbots with some code to hit the vector database and get the answer. And this is something which was never discussed before the era of Gen AI. So this vector database, I'll not move more into this depth, but look into the vector database. Has a lot of potential, and this will be one of the core foundation for any data organization to build intelligent AI models and the chatbots, especially on these databases, because you will never hear a chatbot created from a regular RDBMS. You will never hear that. You will always hear something about vector DB. So that's the reason it's very crucial, and it needs to be part of your data foundation. It's a very high level reference architecture, which I wanted to give as a AI ready data. We have the sources are all same, ingestion method, it's all the same. Now this has become crucial for Lakehouse, because now you can have the data as a structured data as well as the unstructured data, and you may have some of the semi-structured data as well, JSON and XML, but mostly it's in the structured and unstructured, which will be sitting on Lakehouse. Then we have the serving layer. Feature store and vector database is something which got added new because of our consumers got advanced on LLM RAG apps, some ML models, not ML, but mostly on the Gen AI side. The semantic and ontology layer, this which we all discussed about earlier, this plays a crucial role if you have RAG apps or any kind of LLM models which are required. So this plays a bigger role on how do we give a meaning to the data, and also find the relationship of the data that we have provided. Now, this has what we say is as governance. So we are governing all these things right now, as everything needs to be governed. So we call it as, like, that's why I put the cross-tech governance, lineage, access, and trust across everything, because without governance, the AI ready data would not be possible. And that's the reason it needs a trust for any of the consumers to use any of the GPT applications or RAG applications, or and any of the Gen AI applications there. So this is a very high level. It's not very detailed, but just a high level overview of what the reference architecture of a modern data might look like. Managing knowledge. This is the fourth one. This is the second last one. But we have, the reason why I wanted to put this exclusively is because of the Gen AI part of it, or the LLM, or the AI, how it is going. Earlier, the data we used to have was mostly on the structured data. But now if you see with the era of Gen AI, the data has completely changed. The foundation has changed. We have most of the data coming as unstructured. And that's the reason I just wanted to put where the knowledge resides. Now, the knowledge can be any of the email chats. It can be any of the PDF, Word doc, even the contracts, filings. Most of them are on the unstructured data. And if you see most of the bots that you might have thought about in your organization, you might see that the source of the data, a few of them will definitely be unstructured, but most of them will still rely on some of the unstructured data, which was not there previously. So that's the reason it's very important to how do we even source or organize the unstructured data part. Now, how do we do the readiness part of it? So when we say ready part for a structured data, we all know about these, the schema types, row level, row count, volume, everything. This is something which is known to us because we are working on structured data for a long time for any of the reports and everything. But what happened with the era of Gen AI is that the unstructured data is playing a much bigger role now. Now, how do we find the metadata? How do we chunk the data? Chunk data is that when you come across about vector DB, you will see that how do we chunk the data? Like you have a PDF which is 1,000 pages, and like that we have 100 PDFs. how do we chunk this information, because we cannot just put all the data into one index or something. It has to be chunked across. Now these things have come across, the freshness of the data and the permission, which is very critical, who is permitted to read this data. So all these things have come across as already what it means as knowledge. RAG, I'll not get more into it because it's more on the AI side of it, but I just wanted to say why RAG is important and how, and as RAG is important, how data plays a big role. Because RAG, you might have already seen about this retrieve, augment, crowning part. Like the problem with that is, how do we retrieve the enterprise content? It becomes really important that RAG plays a big role on the Gen AI products or whatever products that we are using for AI. So the data becomes very crucial, because how do we are retrieving the data? Because as you know about RAG, right, it's mostly about retrieval augmented generation. So how do we retrieve the data from where we are retrieving it? How do we augment, or how do we add the context to that data? And how do we generate, that is, how do we answer it? So that's the reason RAG is important. I'll not go more into what RAG is because it's a different topic altogether. I'll just move to, because RAG, it's all I have talked about, how the chunking and everything works, but this is different topic on altogether on how the RAG is, because I just want to stick to it. I didn't want to skip, but as I was discussing about garbage in and garbage out, with RAG, it amplifies a lot. Because now what happens is, so with the RAG, you are able to retrieve the information, augment it, and when you generate it, it gets generated to various places. Now, if you have a wrong field which is in the table, or any wrong information which is in the PDF, that gets amplified in various levels. So for that reason, the data foundation is very much important while you are dealing with RAG. And that's the reason I wanted to just hit the topic of RAG, but not get more into it, because it's a different topic altogether, and it's a huge one. So, but this RAG, as it plays a big role with AI and the chatbots, data becomes very much crucial, because here, if the data is not taken in a proper way, or it's not organized in a proper way, then the error rate becomes much amplified to the users. So just going to from RAG to a different topic right now. Let me go into this one. As we know about RAGs, and this is also, which is also talking about RAGs itself, but I'll not go more into this as well, because this is all about RAG and knowledge graph. So RAG is something which is depend on how the retrieval is happening from a very linear way. What the knowledge graph is, mostly if you talk about the graph DB, how the graph used to be with nodes and vertices, and how the edges were, how it is connected to each other. So the new things which is happening around the industry right now is more about getting from RAG. If you have RAG, it's all fine, but if you want to do more things, like there are 100,000 documents, how each of the documents are related to each other, because there might be documents which are related to finance, and there might be 10 documents which are related to the same topic, how the relationships occur. Now, these relationships actually is being defined properly in a graph way, if you see. So that's the reason nowadays a graph RAG is also getting popular, and many people are using graph RAG because it's faster. As you know, graph DBs are faster in connections, and it can give relationships very faster. And that's the reason right now people are moving from flat RAG directly going to the knowledge graph. But this is a different topic. Still, why I wanted to discuss about it, it all falls under the data foundation, because if you don't have the correct data, even with that, you cannot create a good knowledge graph, and it will impact your AI product. So I just wanted to make sure that the people are aware of what RAG is, and how people are moving from RAG, a flat RAG, to a knowledge graph, and why they are moving towards it, and how data is playing a big role in all this process. This I've already talked about on how we have to name the owners. This is just a repeat of some of the other slide which I discussed earlier. Same thing about the ownership, source of truth, the freshness or the frequency of the data getting updated, the classification of the data. These are very crucial for any of the enterprise who are dealing with the AI. And this all falls into the data organization, how they are organizing, cataloging, and managing their data in a proper way. This is the last one I wanted to share. How do we create the data readiness roadmap? And this is very critical. Now, this is just a roadmap, and it can differ with the organization, how they are defining it. Well, I have defined it in 6 dimensions as of now: quality, accessibility, architecture, governance, knowledge, and skills. Now, it can differ with everyone. Now, how well defined your organization is, because I've seen many organizations where they have not defined the domains and subdomains, and that is fine. There are many organizations where because it might be a very small unit, they may not have defined it, or it might be not matured enough to define their domains and subdomains. And it's fine, because everyone is in the process of evolution and getting modernized. But the domain and the subdomain owners, the names, everything must be defined, because it gives a source of ownership on what the data is. And when you have a source of the ownership, the sense of responsibility increases a lot, because here what happens is you are able to now say that who is responsible for this data. Now, in that way, what happens, it becomes the ownership responsibility. So for that reason, how do we mature an organization? And it deals with all these things that I have come across. There might be many criterias apart from these, like the skill set, architecture, how modernized the architecture is, the tool sets, the technology stack, whatever we have, it's very important. How do we modernize it? So if you want to do a roadmap for your organization, you need to see all these things first, and then you can go step by step. It's not from day one you would be able to do everything. It needs to be taken step by step. And what we need to do first is to analyze what our organization is going through and feels like. This is what I was talking about, like what the high leverage would be if you want to do anything for your organization. First, the ownership part, because that's very important. If you have a data and it needs to have an owner, if there is no owner for that data, then it becomes very difficult for any of the organization to move forward. That's why the domain ownership, you need to define domains, then you have domain, subdomains, and domain ownership, and then you have the critical data. It may not be same across all the organization, but I'm just telling that this is how most of the organization they work on. Then we do, once the ownership is defined, then we do on how do we catalog the data and make it discoverable. And it can be done through many tools and vendors available in the market. I just don't want to say any one of them, but everyone is fine. But we need to do the cataloging. It's very important. And then, as I was discussing about the gold domain, or you can say the gold layer, you might have seen the Medallion architecture. You need to have a gold standard of the data. That's very important. The reason for gold standard of the data is because, as I was talking about, like you have same data across many business units. And the problem is, or engineering teams, same data to 5 different engineering teams. When the business comes, they ask for any kind of business problem. The problem is which source to trust to, because we have the same data coming from 5 different places. So that's why to have domain ownership, cataloging the data, and making the golden source of data is very important. The last one, which we have to do, I'll not go into the ontology part because that's a bit advanced for any of the organization to go for at the first phase, but the semantic definition should be there. That means the data dictionary, what this table is doing, what the PDF is supposed to do, at least the metadata part of it. The semantic definition, it can also be the data dictionary, what each column is doing. That needs to be coming from the SME or the data steward of that domain. That's why this is being followed. The ownership first, then we do the catalog, we make the domain, but we need to have the semantic definitions or the data definitions going side by side. These are some of the high leverage things that we need to do first, and the first thing that we need to do in any organization. The other part, right now, I'll not go through all, but the first thing what happens for any organization is that to buy tools. I know there are a lot of vendors who are available how to buy tools, and everyone buys tools because no one wants to build anything which is being already built by some vendors. But that should not be the first thing that we should go for. The first thing we should always think about, are we organized? Because if you are not organized, any of the tools which are available in the market will not be able to help you, because that would not be a great thing to do first. That's why I put buying a tool is one of the worst thing first, not worst, but I'll say that not the first thing to be done while you are organizing your data in an enterprise. You need to have a few things defined first. In parallel, you can definitely look into tools, but these things must be defined, because if these are not defined properly, or if it is not going in parallel, then none of the tools will be able to do this. So that's very important. So I just wanted to say what are the sequence and what we need to take first. A phased approach divided into 3 phases. Definitely, it can be changed. It can be modified according to the needs of the organization and the people, and the maturity of the organization also. First, we need to do the SS part, the domain ownership, the data ownership, who is accountable for what. That's what I mentioned about centralized. So stand up a centralized data catalog. This is something which some organization will definitely agree, or some may not agree, because there might be issue with sharing of the data. So that's why I said, like, all these phases which I defined, which I came to know, but it may not be applied to all the organization. But at least these are some of the points where the team can actually take from phase by phase approach. First, always, how do we assess our organization, the maturity level, define. Then we create the build part where we define the SLAs, the cold data sets, streamline the governance process. And then we go for the AI, because if these phase 1 and phase 2 are not there, AI will not be able to do anything, because AI completely depends on data. Without data, there is no AI or any bot or any models. The data plays the critical role. And for data, it needs to be governed and well defined. Otherwise, it will be a swampy data and you will not get any benefit out of AI. So these 3 phases, and it can be curated in a different, or cultivated in a different way as well. The last thing I wanted to say is that it becomes problem, because I have seen many organizations getting into, because now the knowledge is overwhelmed, because we have so much of things to do. So I always tell everyone, this is just my opinion. What I always tell everyone is that take a use case, make it a data ready, do everything well governed, data definition, ontology, semantic, whatever is required, and then go to the next one, just to prove that how much time, how much effort to do one use case in a proper way. Once you do that, you will have an estimation, and in that, what will happen is that you would be able to ship the things in a proper way. Without one use case, the problem is that you would be seeing the entire process to be a very overwhelming, and you will not be getting into the first step. So what I always recommend everyone, that if you want to go for the first step, just start with one simple use case. Do the things which I just said earlier. Domain owner, the golden source of data, semantic layer, like defining all the data dictionary and everything. Ontology is something which can be in phase 2 or phase 3, not now. And then make it available. So if you do that, you'll just be able to have an idea how this thing looks like. And then you can have the teams come and refine the process, and then rinse and repeat. And this will actually make an impact for a long term. This is something which I always talk about, and this is like what are the metrics. These are the same things, if you see, which I discussed in previous slide as well, on how the metrics would look like, because these are the things now for any of the organization who are moving towards AI or making their AI ready would be looking into these metrics for sure, because that would help them on how do we get more ready to the enterprise level AI. So 5 things before we need to avoid. Like, this is something which I wanted to tell at the end. The 5 things that we need to avoid is we don't have to boil the ocean. We need to pick a use case and then go for it. just see how much effort it is. Don't buy a tool that is something like, you can buy a tool, definitely buy a tool, because there are few things we should not build, because there is always a question between build versus buy. Buy a tool which